Full story. Life in that luxurious mansion in Thailand was nothing short of a nightmare for me. 7 years ago, I set out on a solo adventure across Asia. Bangkok was my second to last stop. It was during my time at a bustling street market that I encountered an extremely charming European man. He was strikingly attractive, and after a pleasant conversation, he asked if I would join him for dinner. His smooth demeanor and charisma convinced me to say yes. We went out that night, and he told me that he lived in the U.S., not far from where I did, though he was currently on vacation in Thailand. After dinner, he suggested we go to the best nightclub in the city. The evening was going well, and at the end of the night, he called a taxi for us. It was in the taxi that things took a sharp turn. He offered me some water, which I took without thinking. After a few sips, everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a small, windowless room. I immediately assumed I was in a basement. There was no one around. My heart raced as I began to scream for help, pounding at the walls in desperation. After what seemed like an eternity, a man entered. He was tall and slim, a different person from the one I had dinner with. He placed food and water in front of me, but when I asked about the man I had been with, he said nothing. The man left, and I was alone again. I didn't know what was happening or why I was here. I ate the food, unsure when I would eat again. Hours passed, and the silence was deafening. Then more men entered. They seemed to inspect me from a distance, slowly closing the gap until they were standing right over me. I froze, too scared to move. They examined me thoroughly, checking my teeth and shining a flashlight in my face. The worst part came when they started searching me, probing every inch of my body, leaving no part untouched. They spoke in a language I didn't understand, but I guessed it was Thai. Eventually they left, and I was left in silence again. The next day was even harder. I sat huddled on the cold floor, hugging my knees and crying quietly. My mind was flooded with questions, but I had no answers. Was I going to die here? Was I a hostage no one came into the room for the entire day, which was both a relief and a source of dread? The silence pressed on me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to recall anything from the day before, any small detail that might explain why I was here. But everything was a blur. Their faces, their voices, none of it stuck. Days stretched into one long, unmarked period of time. I no longer knew whether it was day or night. I only had the food and water they brought me every now and then to keep me going. The room was bare, except for a single dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling, flickering occasionally. It felt like I was slowly losing my mind. At night, I would dream of home, of my family, and then wake up to the crushing reality of my situation. I regretted ever agreeing to go out with that man. I felt so stupid for trusting him. I blamed myself for everything. One day, the slim man came into the room without food, only a glass of water. I drank it, and within hours, I felt lightheaded and dizzy. I passed out. When I woke up, I found myself in a new place. The bed I was lying on was soft, and the room around me was large with silk sheets. The high ceilings were decorated with classic artwork, and there was a large fireplace at one end of the room. Sitting in a chair near the fireplace was a man who looked back at me. I panicked and scrambled out of bed, running towards the door. It was locked. My heart raced as I searched for another exit. The man didn't move as I ran around the room screaming for help. There was no way out. I shouted at him, demanding to be let free. I threatened to call the police, telling him that people knew I was here. He just watched me, offering no response. The longer I stayed in the room, the more my stomach churned. I felt like I might throw up. The realization hit me hard. I was stuck here. He came over to try to console me, but I pulled away, refusing to let him touch me. He spoke in broken English, telling me that he had purchased me and that I would serve as a maid for him. He said I was free to use the kitchen and that I could join the other girls later. According to him, I would have my own room, and my duties would be to cook and clean for him. He offered me hundreds of thousands of dollars for my work. He seemed to be a man of power in Thailand, given the lavish mansion and the way he carried himself. There were 5 other women living in the house, all of them serving him. They had been here for longer than I had, and I couldn't tell if they were truly happy or if they were pretending. They acted like they loved him, either because they were brainwashed or because they were the best actresses I had ever seen. Days turned into weeks, and I began to work alongside the other maids. We were often alone in our rooms, and I tried to talk to them. I wanted to understand if they were genuinely content with their lives here, but they always told me they were grateful to him. They seemed so empty, their smiles too, practiced their eyes vacant. I decided to follow their lead, mostly out of fear. I obeyed his every command, afraid of what might happen if I didn't. He started calling me to his room more often, asking me to wash his clothes or serve him dinner. I didn't know why, but it felt like he took an interest in me more than the other girls. Maybe he thought I was prettier than the others. One evening, he invited me to his library. He told me to dust the bookshelves, and I did as he asked. As I worked, I noticed that he was watching me closely. I looked up and saw him nodding with approval. He picked a book off the shelf, asking if I had read it. I shook my head, and he handed it to me, telling me I should read it. He had always discouraged the maids from reading, watching TV, or even listening to music, so this felt unusual. I took the book, and over time, my tasks became more important. He allowed me to take care of his private study, a space no other maid was allowed to enter. I realized that he trusted me more than the others. After about a year, I had become his favorite. He called on me for nearly everything, and I enjoyed privileges that the other maids didn't have. This caused tension between us, and I could hear them whispering behind my back. They didn't know the secret I had discovered. One night while cleaning the study, I found a cell phone tucked away in the drawer of his desk. I hesitated, unsure if it was some kind of test. For the first few days, I didn't touch it. But then I checked again, and each time the phone was still there. On the 5th day, I decided to take a chance. The phone wasn't locked, and I quickly tried to contact anyone who might help. The signal was weak, but I found a spot where it stayed steady long enough for me to make a call. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the contacts, desperate to reach someone, anyone who could help me. I found a number and dialed, praying that someone would answer. The phone rang for what felt like forever before someone finally picked up. "Hello," they said, and I exhaled in relief. They could hear me. I told them everything, how I had met the man, how he had kidnapped me, and how I was now trapped in a mansion in Thailand. I begged them to help me. They asked for my location, but I couldn't give them specifics, only that it was a large mansion owned by a man who seemed to have connections in the Thai government. I begged them to track the call, but they said they couldn't trace it right away. Still, they promised they would do everything they could to help. I thanked them over and over before hanging up and quickly putting the phone back where I found it. I resumed my cleaning just as the door creaked open. The man entered and smiled at me, and I forced a calm expression, hoping he hadn't noticed anything unusual. The next morning felt strange. The house was unusually quiet, and my nerves were on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was off. But I kept my composure, finishing my duties while my heart raced. I didn't know how much longer I could keep up the charade, but all I could do was wait. Days turned into weeks, and each hour felt longer than the last. The tension was unbearable. I continued to do my duties, cleaning and taking care of the mansion. Every movement felt like I was being watched, and my heart raced every time the man or one of the other maids came near me. I had to keep up the appearance that everything was normal, but inside I was terrified. I checked the phone I had hidden every chance I got. The signal was still weak, but just strong enough for me to send out short, frantic messages. I couldn't risk being caught, so each time I would quickly text, whoever was on the other end, telling them where I was and that I was still okay. Then I would hide the phone again, trying to act as though nothing was wrong. The man seemed to be watching me more closely than usual, and the other maids were growing increasingly distant. They barely spoke to me now, and I could see the emptiness in their eyes. It was as if they had already given up on any chance of escape, content to live in this prison they had accepted as their reality. I couldn't help but feel for them, but I knew that I couldn't give up. I had to stay strong for them and for myself. The man continued to call me to his room more frequently, and I couldn't help but feel that he was getting more possessive. It was almost as if he was testing me, trying to see if I would show any signs of resistance. I did my best to keep my emotions in check, but the fear was constant, always lurking just below the surface. I couldn't stop thinking about the police and whether or not they would come for me. Each day felt like an eternity, and I found it hard to concentrate on anything but the possibility that this could be my last chance to escape. I had to be careful. One mistake, one slip-up, and everything could fall apart. Then one day, as I was cleaning the large, elegant hallway, I heard the unmistakable sound of sirens. My heart leaped into my throat, and I couldn't help but turn toward the window. Through a crack in the curtains, I saw flashing lights and the silhouettes of people moving around the front gate. I froze. The authorities had arrived. From my vantage point, I could see men in uniforms, more official-looking than regular police officers, walking into the mansion. They were speaking with the man who had held us captive. I couldn't hear their words, but I could see the anger in his gestures as he waved his arms, trying to explain himself. I had no idea how it happened, but I knew this was it. I was going to be rescued. I stayed in my place, holding my breath as the situation unfolded. I couldn't risk drawing attention to myself now. The man seemed to be arguing with the officers, trying to defend himself, though it was clear that he wasn't getting away with it this time. Just then, one of the officers noticed me. He walked over quietly, signaling for me to follow him. My heart was pounding as I stood up, trying to act calm, but inside, I was on fire with relief and fear. They were here. I was going to get out of this nightmare. I walked past the man who was still arguing with the authorities. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a brief moment, I saw the betrayal and confusion on his face. I didn't have time to process what I was seeing. I just kept moving, staying close to the officer who was guiding me out. I was led out of the mansion and into a car. The drive to the airport felt like a blur. I could hardly believe it was happening. After all this time, I was finally free. At the airport, more agents met me and ushered me into a secure area. They promised to take care of me and let me speak when I was ready. The plane ride back to the U.S. was a surreal experience. I kept replaying everything in my mind at the man's face, as I was escorted away, the confusion and anger in his eyes. When the plane landed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was finally home, back in the U.S., safe from the man who had kept me captive. As I walked through the airport, I felt both a sense of relief and a deep concern for the other girls I had left behind. I knew they were still trapped in that mansion, still serving him, still living in fear. I was escorted to a safe place where I could rest and process everything. The agents who had helped me were kind, but I could tell they were concerned about how much I had gone through. I didn't want to talk about it just yet, but I knew I had to tell my story. It would help others, I told myself. It had to. Reuniting with my family was an emotional experience. The relief I felt to see them again, to know that I was no longer in danger, was overwhelming. I had so many questions and so much fear to work through. The guilt of leaving the other girls behind was hard to shake. But every day, I tried to move forward to rebuild my life and to find peace. Though the nightmare was over, I knew that healing would take time. The scars would remain, but I was alive. And every day since then has felt like a gift. I hold on to the memory of those I left behind and hope that one day they will find the strength to escape, just as I did. I will never forget what happened to me, But I am no longer the scared girl trapped in that mansion. I am free. And for the first time in a long time, I can breathe again. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.